Asian sex stereotypes and the benefits and challenges Asians experience as a sexual being. Let's talk about it. Hello, my loves. It's Dr. Tara, your favorite sex and relationship expert here at Luvbites, the podcast for sexual wellness and exploration. Today with us, I'm very excited to have a conversation with the badass Justine Ang Fonte, M.Ed, MPH, gotta cite all of the qualifications. She's the child of Philippine immigrants and award-winning intersectional sex and health educator, public speaker, professor, and consultant based in New York City. On Instagram, she's known as your friendly ghost writer, composing the texts you avoid sending about setting your boundaries. Hi, Justine.
Hi, Dr. Tara. Thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm very excited because we're dedicating this whole episode to our Asian communities.
Awesome. All about supporting our people.
Yep. Okay. Well, my first question, and I think I want to talk about this in terms of what's out there for, for research and education and all that, but also if you have experienced any of this, what are some Asian sex stereotypes? And for some of them, are they harmful? Are they supportive or positive? What do you think?
I think all stereotypes are harmful because even if it is deemed a positive one, it then puts an expectation for that person to meet that stereotype.
Yeah.
And if they don't meet it, then they are less Asian because they're not the stereotypical Asian. They're not the Asian people expect or are used to or are palatable for. And I think, we need to just get rid of these stereotypes and really just understand who this human being is, as opposed to making these snap judgments or assumptions. So some of the stereotypes that I'm going to just put all in the need to get rid of category. We're subservient, we are quiet, we are accommodating, we are asexualized, hypersexualized object. We are built to serve, to care give, and to prioritize other people's needs above our own.
Wow. What a succinct list. I'm
Yeah.
have you talked about this before? That was a very succinct list. So let's break that down. I can see a theme of this subservience, right? Because being accommodating, caretaker, people pleaser, kind, extremely polite, all of these things are under the subservience. Why are we taught to be subservient, or why do people perceive a lot of Asians to be, and not everyone obviously, but a lot of Asians to be subservient?
I think for the Asian American experience, which is the one I can speak to best, and might not be the case with Asians who immigrate to the US, like my parents, we've adopted some cultural traits that are meant to be positive. We want to be hospitable. We want people to feel safe. We want people to feel included. We want people to enjoy being around us. And I think a lot of that comes with, this debt of giving all of the time, which I think is a beautiful trait and a beautiful cultural aspect to, the Asian community. But when it extends to especially an immigrant experience, when you're entering a space that is not your own, when you are the minority, I feel like that trait gets amplified into one of not sticking up for yourself, not defending yourself, not claiming your worth, out of fear that it might rock the boat or create tension with the more powerful culture. And when you immigrate to a place like the United States, the more powerful culture is whiteness, which is not something Asians are. And so, I think a lot of that positive cultural traits of, being accommodating and caring got twisted in a lot of immigrant experiences out of the need for survival and to really fit in, where it really was a foreign land for them.
Do you feel like that particular sex stereotype is only for Asian women?
Oh, absolutely not. I think
You think also Asian men are also seen as like passive and not, what's a good word? Not like sexually confident or like just
or just
subservient.
desexualized.
Right, right, right. Is that a
So
thing?
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks to media. Absolutely. I think in general, who else experiences something similar? I think femmes of other races and ethnicities. Absolutely. There's this need to, for the way we raise young girls, to be subservient, to be accommodating, to be caring.
Mhm.
And so the additional aspect of being an Asian femme just really amplifies that stereotype. I think when it comes to Asian men, it's not so much that they are, subservient or accommodating, but they are meant to not rock the boat. They're meant to be quieter. They're expected to be weaker and not be as assertive. And I think where media comes in is how they have really subjected a lot of Asian male characters to be this
Mhm.
caricature of weakness and, not being something that can be desired in a
Right.
sexual or romantic way. And the stereotypical roles are very much linked to antisocial, doesn't know how to create romance, isn't really seen as someone that can be a sexual being. And so the way we look at a lot of Asian men, even still to this day in 2022, is very much not in a way that we would a white man or a black man, where we can say, oh, he's hot, he's attractive.
Right.
And, I think media is doing better with that representation, but it definitely is still a marginalization for a lot of Asian men.
Wow, now that I think about it, I think I've read a study that prior to 2005, there was not a single quote unquote sexy Asian male on TV.
Mm, mm,
And that's like, it's interesting how that definitely shapes reality for people, right?
absolutely.
Even though it
Media,
might not be a truthful reality, but it is reality.
totally. I think for better or for worse, media creates consciousness. And
Right.
as a result of that, people who aren't familiar with the Asian culture, or they don't have a lot of Asian people around them, they use media as their education for who we are. And if
Mhm.
we think back on, all right, well, then who's running media? Who's
Mhm.
behind those cameras? Who are the producers? Who are the directors? It tends to still be white men. And so it's
Mhm.
through their gaze of how they want to see Asian people, and particularly Asian men. And I think, like, for like the Men's Health magazine, it wasn't since Jet Li in the 90s that there was an Asian man until Simu Liu, I think just 2 years ago. And that was a huge deal that
Yeah.
the second Asian man made it to the front cover of Men's Health in the US.
Wow. I'm uh I'm shocked that that's the case, and now that I think about it, that's true. I recently came across this TikTok where this guy goes around and asks public opinion, and one of the questions was, "Who would you not date?" And he went
Mm,
around a college campus asking a bunch of different girls, like maybe 12 different girls, women, 12 different women, and almost all of them said Asian.
mm,
Uh, which I can see that predicament for Asian men, how, just long period of representation on the media. And also, I think our culture and communication styles, like family and how we're raised, all of that kind of pile on the Asian men um situation, and it makes me feel like, but what can we do?
right, right. I mean,
Like,
what
I
you
want to
just
ask
shared
you, what can
there,
we do?
I mean, we can do a part of it is having a conversation like this. I think most people don't realize this. They're not thinking about, sexology research often, and yet it is so much a part of our actual IRL experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the data that you're sharing about, not dating Asian men to a group of, college women, very much is parallel to the studies that OkCupid has collected over the years. The group that gets the most right swipes and matches are Asian women. The group that gets the least the least amount of right swipes or matches are Asian men. How does the same racial group have such a divide purely based on gender? Well, thanks to racism and the way that we are sexist and the way that white supremacy is still very much powerful and have dictated a lot of people's lenses. That is why there's such a divide. Asian women are hypersexualized and Asian men are desexualized.
Interesting. When you say Asian women are hypersexualized, in my personal experience, when I look around and as an international student, right? When I came here, I went to an international student orientation. And when I think about that experience, most Asian women in that room, I would say seem asexual, like seem not sexual at all. So do you feel like this is an American thing where like, oh, an Asian woman is very sexual? Because I feel like in my country, I'm originally from Thailand and I go back there very often. My whole family is there. I feel like in my culture, like women are not that sexual. What do you think?
I think it has nothing to do with who the people actually are and all about perception and how oftentimes media is portraying people that look like them. I think a lot of this in terms of Hollywood started when the movie A Full Metal Jacket came out. And when that movie came out, there were, these U.S. military soldiers that landed, I think, in Thailand. And there was a sex worker walking around the streets saying, "Me love you long time. Me love you long time."
Oh,
and
that's that movie?
And this became the start of using a phrase like that, even in 40-Year-Old Virgin, in South Park, in so many other movies, that it's become this thing where, so, Asian femmes are deemed as sexual objects present to serve white men. And this phrase is like funny. And, people think it's like, okay. And it's just like, this is who you are. And isn't this a compliment? It means that we think you're hot. Austin Powers and, the Japanese twins that he's attracted to, their names are like Fook you and Fook me. I mean, how much more racist can we get? And yet how many laughs did that, conjure? And so, this is very much rooted in American media for sure. I know that culture the best, so I can't speak so much on the international level, but I know that, the U.S. military has definitely been impacted by this every time they, pull into a port, fly into a base. And that type of colonization still exists, even if you're not, in taking over a land, you are definitely infiltrating its culture. And for a lot of, these Asian femmes see this as maybe a way out of their own country to be able to become this mail order bride, or to become this subservient wife in a better world that is America. And so this is very much, rooted in history. It's rooted in a lot of the racism that we've been experiencing, and definitely in Hollywood films.
Yeah. Have you seen 90 Day Fiancé?
I have seen some episodes.
Have you seen the Asian ones, like from the Philippines?
I've seen clips of it, but there's a reason I don't. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's a reason I don't watch a lot of those because of that reduction.
Like,
well, because we're being we're being reduced to our race, or being reduced to our ethnicity, as opposed to, who we are that happens to be of that race or ethnicity. And, when we reduce someone to that one identity, we're not seeing them as this multifaceted human being. And that is exactly what makes, beauty complex, is like so many layers of our identities. But when we're reduced to what we look like, it makes sense why looking Asian is enough to get you Asian hate crimed, as we have seen in recent news in the US.
Super scary. It's super scary. And another stereotype that came to my mind instantly as I was asking that question is Asian men have small dicks. What do you think about that?
I think that people need to wake up. I think people need to stop reducing whatever they've learned to, rumors and to media. I mean, to, offer an additional stereotype, this stereotype that Asian women, have tight vaginas because you're small and you're petite and
I've never heard of that.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. And therefore, the stereotype that like, oh, I want you not just because you would be the ideal wife, but also you would feel tighter than most other people that, I might have been active with. And so there's just all of this, again, these stereotypes that might seem positive, might seem negative. All of it is bad because it is exactly that, a stereotype.
And like you said, reducing a person, a multifaceted human being to just this one thing.
Right.
Like, oh, it doesn't matter what she has accomplished. She's just this one thing.
Right.
And what a disservice.
Absolutely.
We were talking offline a little bit about the experiences of the people, like the Asians in Asia, like Asians in the Philippines, like you were mentioning, and I was talking about Thailand and how like that's slightly different, and you were talking about that examples of Thailand and the Philippines. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So most of my experience with the Philippines is in the provinces and not so much Metro Manila. And I want to make that distinction because I know that culturally they are drastically different. So if anyone's listening in and thinks of the Philippines as just Manila, this is not going to necessarily relate or be translatable to you. But for those that are familiar with, provinces, this is where my family is from, in 2 different provinces, and the reproductive health organization that I am a board of director of is also based in one of the other provinces. So I'm most familiar with 3 different provinces, that is Romblon, Nueva Vizcaya, and Palawan. And these are far, like in terms of literal distance from Manila. And therefore the experiences of that, rural nature tend to be ones that are extremely draconian, rooted in the Catholic faith, and extremely misogynistic and patriarchal. That sense of sexual liberation, or even, owning and being empowered by your sexuality, is definitely not fully present in Manila, but it is definitely not something even being considered in the provinces. So, when you're in a metropolis like, Manila, there's going to be more diversity of thought and education available, and international influence that is going to allow for possibly more avenues and outlets to be sexually liberated. But in, these rural areas of the provinces, it's definitely not the case. And there is really not an understanding of sex being anything except for the purpose of procreation, and of power in terms of, sexual violence. But the idea of pleasure coming from sex is extremely taboo and rarely discussed.
Wow. So in those provinces, women with their like vibrator masturbating is not a thing.
I mean, I don't even know where you could buy a vibrator in any of the provinces.
What about
honestly.
Manila? Probably
More so in Manila again, but it's not where I have the most experience. But I mean, I'm sure there is a sex toy shop, an adult video store, or 100 in Manila. There is a quote red light district in Manila, and oftentimes those are occupied by white men and European white men who are coming in for vacation, looking for a bride, and hoping to leave with somebody. And
you
so
said this bride thing a couple times. Can you talk more about that? Like, do people actually go find a bride?
Oh yeah.
Is it a thing? Is it a whole industry? Like, what is this? Like, I've seen 90 Day Fiance, but I thought that was an individual case.
Sure. So, I mean, if you Google mail order bride and put images or just see info, you'll often see that something connected to the Philippines is usually at the top of that search. And, you know, because of that stereotype, beyond what I shared about Asian stereotypes, you know, being subservient, a Filipino wife is the ideal wife because of
Why is
our
that?
hospitality, because of our ability to speak English, because of it's one of our national languages. So it's just a very tourist friendly place for you to find someone that you can communicate with and carry all their favorite Asian stereotypes as well. And you know, this type of stereotype is one that I've experienced here from an Uber driver in New York City.
Whoa, what did he say?
I get into the car. Uber driver looks back and says, Justine. I said, hi, yep, that's me, you know, going to XYZ place. And the question is, what are you? Which is a typical answer I'll get in, you know, the United States of America, because it's their way of asking me, you know, how foreign I am. And, you know, I'm rolling my eyes and thinking, is it today that I address the microaggression, or do I just get this over with because I want now a quiet car?
Yeah.
And so I just
How much
address
effort
it. And
do you want to put in?
I said, you know, so like, you know, where are you from, or what are you? And I said, I'm Filipina. And I figured like that would be end of conversation, but of course not. The conversation continues where, you know, the driver says, oh, Filipina. How many friends have told me that a Filipino wife is the ideal wife?
Really?
And what was interesting about this this day was actually I was en route to a Filipina production on you know, the colonization of our bodies that I was actually producing and was a performer in as well. And so it was just, you know, this very you know, difficult moment where I was like, I am trying to be so beyond this world, and this is a very clear reminder of the world that I actually remain in. You know, being reduced to this idea. And so I kind of just like nodded in my head, didn't respond, didn't want to, you know, entertain this conversation. But this is how people see us. And, you know, like Christina Yuna Lee, rest in peace, February 13th of this year, right, is stabbed multiple times on her way home in Chinatown in the middle of the night from a complete stranger. And reports say that during the interview, he said, well, I was sexually motivated by her, who was a complete stranger. So how are you sexually motivated by someone you've never met before? Oh, because you've reduced her face and her race to a sexual object and something that you're used to jacking off to, because her body is one of the, you know, top search terms on Pornhub.
Yeah. Whoa, that's crazy. So this is what he said?
This is what he said.
I was sexually
Same thing happened in Atlanta at the massage parlor. The Korean women that
like
died by the shooting asked the same, the perpetrator, the same thing. A white man having a bad day. He said, I needed to get rid of my temptations. He doesn't know these people, these masseuses, but he associates temptations with, you know, these Asian women. So it's not about like how this affects our dating life and all of that. This is literal life-saving content that we need to be talking about, because people are only talking about this in the context of violence and Asian trauma.
Right. Right. I'm glad that we're merging both, and that I can like put this out there and people can learn how like all of these things that, I mean, for one, you know, as someone who like came from abroad and came here, I didn't understand a lot of these like Asian American uh what's the word, discourse that when I was in grad school that people were talking about, because I have a completely different experience, but now I'm starting to learn more and more from educators, one like you, where some of these stereotypes that I as an international student used to think it was funny, are actually disrupting people's lives to the point where, I mean, it's like life and death, and it's so scary. And I hope that we can put more of this stuff out there so that people can learn to be more aware, and mindful of their words, and mindful of how they interact, people of our Asian communities in in a more compassionate ways. So
Right.
now that we like kind of talk about like others and how these stereotypes come to be and how I guess the word is like how it's enacted, what about us? Like what about our families, and what are some challenges that we as Asians of different cultures experience when it comes to sexuality and sexual empowerment due to our own like cultural factors and beliefs?
Mhm. I mean, I can speak best to, the Filipino-American
Yeah.
culture, of course, as someone who is Filipina. And a lot of the struggles that I know my community has with talking about sexual liberation and empowerment is that our culture is so intertwined with the Catholic Church. And I'm not talking about Catholic Church in the way that most Americans or even South Americans experience it, where, you're a cafeteria Catholic, you pick and choose what you like from the religion. I'm talking about draconian, patriarchal, Catholic practices. I remember, when I was doing some grad school work and my research in the Philippines, there were a lot of people protesting the new pope, saying that, the pope is not as Catholic as the Philippines. And, it was because he was like opening up to this idea that queer people, are God's people too. And already that was going so against the draconian angles that Filipinos were used to. I recall when the reproductive health bill was trying to be passed, which would allow for particularly sex education to become a little bit more comprehensive than abstinence only, there would be other aspects of these restrictions in place, that if you were trying to get the birth control pill at a pharmacy, it wasn't showing a prescription that they would then allow you to have it. It would be showing a wedding band on your ring finger to prove that you are in a faithful, monogamous relationship, under the law. And now you're allowed to maybe protect yourself from pregnancy if you don't want to.
Oh, wow. So
There were
no birth
similar
control.
restrictions with condom access and, wanting to just get condoms. Well, no, because sex is not for pleasure. Sex is for procreation. So why are you accessing this? So, I mean, a lot of these things with, not separating church and state in the Philippines have drastic implications on people's access to not just their reproductive health, but their entire well-being.
So does this like belief and how it's practiced transfer to Filipinos that moved here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, for myself, growing up Filipino Catholic and attending Catholic school, I felt very much similar experiences to my cousins in the provinces and the types of schools they were going to, which by default were Catholic, even if it wasn't, a tuition paying school that, therefore a public one, because it's just so much a part of the culture is being Catholic. I think it's upwards to like 86% of the country is Catholic. And, having that strong majority means that most of the people occupying Congress and other government leadership are also going to be Catholic, and they want votes that are coming from Catholic people, or they need the leverage of the bishops in order to get their wins, and therefore their platforms are very much catered towards draconian Catholic teachings.
Wow. I have personally seen a lot of people of Catholic faith, or that they grew up Catholic, having a lot of sexual shame. And some of them can't even get over like masturbating, especially women.
Yeah,
Because they're like, yeah, I don't want to masturbate.
because all of
I
that
want to
has
have
been
sex with my husband.
right. All of that has been connected to pleasure, and pleasure is not something you're supposed to be experiencing. You're there to reproduce. We have reduced you to a reproductive object to populate more Catholics.
When I've talked to some Catholic sex educators, and they say, well, no, we focus on like the love at that sacred bond between husband and wife, and it's not about like, oh, wife is just there to reproduce. It's like wife is, what was the word that they use, like precious almost, and that like the husband needs to protect, and sex is sacred, and therefore it's not just something you do, like it's not something you do by yourself or something like that, which I mean personally I'm against because I'm all about solo sex is valid. But what do you think about that rebuttal, that like the sacred and like the bond and all of that?
So, I mean, I take issues with a lot of those statements, but I'll start with the part that I agree with. Yeah, I'm also for pro intimacy and people having, connection in their relationships. That's the only overlap I have with whoever you're quoting.
Right.
I have a problem with them limiting their definition of intimacy to a man and a woman. I have a problem with them using the words precious for the woman and protector for the man. These are very much riddled in misogynistic and patriarchal structures. And, not being inclusive of the variety of different relationships of people of a variety of different genders that can be intimate with each other. And I'm not saying that I want people to have loveless intimacy. I'm saying that intimacy looks like a lot of things.
Yeah.
And actually, oftentimes, intercourse does not include intimacy. This is why we have a Me Too movement. Sure, a lot of people are having sex. That doesn't mean people are experiencing intimacy, right? Rape is not something that we need to normalize and put in that category of being the same. And so we need to really start understanding the variety of different ways that people can get to know their body and understand their desires and how those desires can connect to another body of any gender. But, like the way that, you were describing those Catholic sex educators, it's limiting. And it's homophobic, and it's cisnormative, and it's heteronormative, it's misogynistic, it's all the things that are keeping us from really progressing and becoming fully safe and truly protected sexual human beings.
So I grew up going to a Catholic school, and I've never received sex education. Like there was never a class, not even science, like not even sexual health. It's just none at all. But this was Catholic school in Thailand. Did you get sex education?
Catholic school in the United States is similar to Catholic school in Thailand, even still to this day. So my sex ed experience at my K-8 experience was called family life education. It happened in fifth grade.
Family life.
It happened in fifth grade, and it was one class. This class was divided up by gender, and we didn't have enough male teachers in our Catholic school, so they brought the DARE educator. DARE, what does DARE stand for? Drugs. I don't even remember what it stands for, but it's like the drug prevention program that doesn't work. So the DARE educator was a police officer. And so that police officer came in to talk to the boys about, I don't know what, but I know that in my class, where it was me and, the other girls in my class, it was being taught by our homeroom teacher. And I recall a classmate of mine asking, if boys get boners, what do girls get? And my teacher replied, periods. And that was family life / sex education in Catholic school.
Wow. How much did you learn, Justine, in this family life class?
I learned that Catholic school needs to improve sex education. That's what I learned. That's all I learned. But that's the only time that they ever discussed anything about our bodies that, was a missed opportunity to really give us what we needed to take care of ourselves and not feel shame.
Do you educate in high schools now also?
I do. So I'm actually, my trade is really in a K through 12 education setting, but I am now, an adjunct professor. So I teach grad school courses on sex education. And I do conferences and speaking engagements of all sorts to a variety of different people and ages, mainly still centered on how do we talk to young people, K through 12, about sex. So I'm doing the very opposite of the education I got.
Yeah, which is so necessary. It's needed. I teach course called sexual communication, and it focuses on different communication variables that surround like sexuality, sex, gender, sexuality, sexual behavior, and so forth. But I'm surprised every time I have a room full of college students and we do like raise of hand if you received sex education. Okay, people like raise their hands, like raise of hand, you feel like your sex education was helpful, like no one raises their hands. Like no one. So that, what does that say,
It
uh
says that we're still in the exact same place we were,
for like
in
how
terms of
long? For like
education.
50 years or more?
Oh God, no. I mean, since the beginning of humankind, like, so long as the patriarchy has existed,
Yeah.
so has a lack of comprehensive sex education that's actually relevant to people.
I mean, when I'm thinking about like sex education, I also think about how like sometimes, as I don't know if this happens to people of other like ethnic and racial background, but as like an Asian woman and my Asian friends, when we come home, like our parents are very, 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 very silent about sexuality and anything related to sexual health, relationship. It's apart from like when you get to your like 25, then your parents are like, when are you getting married? But
Yeah,
before that, it's nothing at all. Is that
right.
the pattern of Asian American parents also, you think, the
I can say that's the pattern in
majority?
my I think that's the pattern in my experience and from what I've
Mhm.
heard from, my other Asian friends, in that, yeah, it's you are completely asexual
Right.
until I need you to procreate my grandbabies.
Right, right,
And again, it's not when you're 25, they're now asking about marriage and your sex life. They're asking about when are you getting married so that I can
right,
have grandchildren and we can continue on with our, legacy
right,
and our gene
right,
pool
right,
expanding and multiplying. It's still very much through a procreative lens. And
right.
it's, it doesn't become ever, like, how's your relationship with, your partner now? And like, well, like, are you having sex? Are you talking about it? Are you seeing a
Yeah,
couples therapist? Have
yeah.
you tried different things? No, they don't ask about that. They aren't doing it themselves,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The Asian generations, above us were also sexually repressed and, sexually shamed as well. So they don't have the language, but, it's podcasts like yours, it's professors like you and I that are disrupting that narrative so
Mhm.
that, the Asians of the younger generation are seeing, oh, look at these elders that
Yeah,
are talking
elders.
about sex, right?
Wow, elders. Justine, you had to go there.
You know what? I
I mean, I'm
proudly
a
say
proud mid
elders.
30s. I'm a happy mid 30s. I
I
know no
am
complaints.
I'm in the same mid-30s, but
Yeah.
if you go into a class of sophomores, we're elders, Tara.
That's
We're
true.
all.
That's true. They were like, you could be my parent. That's true.
But what is also true is that Asian don't raise in, so we're
That's
gonna
true.
look like this until we're 80. So
And then immediately lose like 5 inches of height.
all the things, all the things.
Well, on a funnier note, I saw this whole uh, Reddit, what is it called? What is it called? Reddit hashtag
Subreddit.
or
Oh,
subreddit? Yeah,
uh-huh.
subreddit. Called yellow fever.
Mm.
And I want you to like break that down for us, sister. Like
Yeah.
yellow
I
fever. I mean, I'm from Thailand, so everyone's yellow. So I don't know specifically what it is, where it's from, why we still using it.
Yeah. I actually haven't heard that term in at least a decade. So, it was a bit of like a throwback when I saw it in your email that you wanted to talk about it. Um, how do I define yellow fever? With its roots in white supremacy, which is how I often start many
Uh-huh.
of my definitions. Um, it is reducing a human being to the quote color of their skin, and for the Asian diaspora, yellow. And so if someone were to have yellow fever, it means that they are only attracted to or have fetishized and exotified and have a strong preference to only date or romantically or sexually be with someone of an Eastern Asian descent. And so that is
Is it
all you
only
are
like
to me.
where men use for women, or is it everyone use for everyone?
I
Or?
think it's everyone using it for everyone. I think I wouldn't be surprised if the roots started with Asian women, and if someone has yellow fever, we're talking about straight men
Mhm.
interested in Asian women only. So to use in a sentence, this guy has yellow fever because his opening line on Tinder to me was, "Ooh, you're Asian. I love Asian girls."
Here's a big do not say I love Asians. Like, it's and I mean in other contexts, like, oh, I love Asian cultures, or like, oh, I love Filipino cultures, oh, I love Thai food. That's cool. But if you're like, oh, like, oh, you're from Asia, oh, I love Asians, like in that way, it's so gross. Like it's okay to have appreciation for, my culture, to
Right,
like my food, like that's
right.
cool. But to say something like that, I think it's rooted from a much more problematic foundation rather than an actual love and appreciation.
Oh, but talk to Tara, their intentions are so good. They just really like us.
That's
Why?
what
Because,
that's what
well,
they
all
always
the
say.
Asian girls I know, they're just so kind and hospitable and caregiving and tight. Like it just goes into the same
And
thing. Like
Thai.
I'm telling you, that I'm complimenting you because the stereotypes about you are so positive. And that's why it's not actually positive, because they are
Mhm,
reducing someone they've never
mhm,
met before to a stereotype and to the
mhm.
sexual object built to serve and accommodate them.
Preach, sister. Well, we're all multifaceted human beings, and so let's always remember that, my
Right.
Love Bites fam. Okay, well, my last question is, I looked up Pornhub statistics, and the number one search term on Pornhub last year was hentai porn. And that's like Asian animated cartoon characters having sex,
Right.
typically girls with really small waist, huge ass, huge tits, and being objected to different sexual activities. What do you think about that? Why is hentai porn number one search term?
I think because when it's a cartoon, people can, producers and the directors can get away with a lot more things that would have been deemed illegal if they used actual human beings that weren't just voice actors.
Uh-huh.
And because the Asian genre is the most popular genre every year on Pornhub's
Uh-huh.
year of review. So how do we get the best of both worlds where we can, have people access their favorite genre, that is Asian women in porn, and get them to do things that we legally can't get done? Oh, we'll just turn them into our cartoon.
Ah.
So this Asian anime allows them to do a lot of things that are normally illegal for actual actors. And now people can get off to these really heinous things without the discussion of consent, without the discussion of the humanity behind what they're watching. And it just further amplifies their desires that are reducing Asian women, particularly, to these sexual objects in terms of what their bodies are supposed to look like and what their bodies are supposed to do to other people's bodies.
Wow. So hentai porn is way more harmful than what we get face value.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think people feel like, oh, it's a cartoon, it's not that bad. And it's like, well, I mean, I'm not saying that it's realistic cartoons, but it is portraying human bodies in cartoon form that are, taking on unrealistic body standards, first and foremost. And then, second, behaving in ways that can be illegal in real life, but because it's a cartoon, now people have more access to, and normalizes those behaviors in without the context of consent being a part of the conversation.
Wow, very interesting. And I find that very insightful. I'm going to have to unpack this on my own and think about that. I would love to move forward to the last part of my show, which is called 10 Quickies with Dr. Tara. Would you like to play this game with me, Justine?
Always
10
in for a
Quickies with
quickie.
Dr. Tara. Okay, so what it is I'm going to give you a word and you just give me a quick response back, and it can be anything. It can be professional, personal, or just a sound.
Okay.
All right, so let's get to it. Number 1, clitoris.
Unfound.
Number 2, educational porn.
Scarce.
Number 3, oral sex.
Underrated.
Number 4, squirting.
Minority.
Number 5, fingering.
Middle school.
Number 6, bisexuals.
Misunderstood.
Number 7, sex drive.
Undiscussed.
Number 8, masturbation.
Unshameful.
Number 9, kink.
Privilege.
And number 10, comprehensive sex education.
Necessary.
Woo! Preach, preach, preach. Where can my Luvbites fam find you?
They can check me out on my website, JustineFonte.com, or find me on Instagram in 2 ways. I'm Justine AF, or my boundary setting account, where I will ghostwrite texts for you that you're too afraid to compose and send on setting your boundaries. That's @_good_buys_.
Love it. Thank you so much for this very valuable and insightful conversation today.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Tara.
And my Luvbites fam, thank you so much for listening till the end of the episode. I hope you feel like you've learned a lot in this episode, and shoot me a message of what you think. Share this episode to all your friends so we can all learn more and have a more elevated consciousness from all of this knowledge. Other than that, per usual, have an orgasmic day.
Thanks for listening. This was Love Bites.
Love Bites.
By Dr. Tara. Follow Dr. Tara on social media @lovebites.co. Have an orgasmic day.